When you think of football in the US, you often think of enormous stadiums dropped into the middle of an endless expanse of surface parking way out in the suburbs. Well, if you go to other countries where they play a different version of football, you'll see a very different approach. A compact stadium close into the city, not much parking, but great for walking, biking, and taking transit. And there are actually some US cities trying to emulate this, which I'd like to encourage. So today I'm going to count down the 10 most urbanist National Football League stadiums in the US. I'll give you some horrifying dishonorable mentions, and I'll also touch on the only other country that takes this sport seriously at all, which is our good friends to the north. And let me address some objections right off the bat. Like, one I've heard before is enormous parking lots at stadiums are good because it means you can tailgate. My counterpoint to that is tailgating is actually like going camping, except it's camping in a parking lot. And the only reason you do it is because the stadium where you're going isn't in a walkable place with lots of bars and restaurants nearby. Another objection to having a pro football stadium right in the heart of your city. An NFL home team only gets 8 or 9 home games a year, plays a couple preseason games, and maybe a playoff game or two. Unless you're Cleveland, so like 350 days a year, it's just a massive white elephant in the middle of your city. And I would just say you need to broaden your thinking. There are a variety of other athletic and cultural events that you might want to host at a 70,000 plus seat venue in the middle of your city. I'm not even talking about like the Eras Tour. I'm talking about cultural events that truly elevate the human spirit and celebrate the highest ideals of civilized society. Okay, before I get to the list, let's talk about what I did here. And to do that, I'm going to use an example that I think is just about the gold standard for a big-time urban football stadium, and that's the Bernabeu, home ground for Real Madrid. Transit is critical for what I'm talking about today, and the Bernabeu has its own metro stop on the 10 line, but just a short walk south is Nuevos Ministerios, where you can also get the 7, and most of the Cercanías regional trains. Buses are important too. I'm not going to count up all the bus lines that serve a stadium, but what I did for US stadiums is enter the exact street address of the stadium and get not only the transit score, but the walk score and the bike score rating as well. The Bernabeu reconstruction is still in process in the latest aerials, but it is operating this season. In fact, they're even hosting an NFL game later this month. So I can't really show you the pedestrian environment, but you can see what the street connectivity and walkability to nearby commercial and residential is. Biking, it's Madrid, so that's a work in progress, but from the couple of times I've been, it seems to be moving in a good direction. A couple other things. I want to look at the urban footprint that's consumed by the stadium, including parking, and the Bernabeu at 80,000 plus seats would be just about the largest NFL stadium, but would easily have the smallest footprint in the league, which I think it's fair to say is a happy byproduct of how good the transit and the walkability are. But also, the last thing I looked at, population within 5 kilometers of the stadium, which is kind of a stand-in for how much of your potential fan base is within easy walking or biking distance. And for the Bernabeu, it's 1.6 million, which is 4 or 5 times the number for the best NFL stadium on this metric, SoFi Stadium in LA, which actually comes in at number 11 on today's list because of how poorly it fares on just about every other metric I used in this analysis. So what I hope you've picked up on is this isn't about the stadiums in a vacuum. It's really about the policy, the infrastructure, and the cultural context the stadium operates within. It's really about the cities themselves, and that was a big wind-up, so let's get into it. Number 10, Empower Field at Mile High in Denver. You know, I don't think there's any way around having to say these dumb sponsor names, so just roll with it. It's kind of average or a little above average on every measure I looked at, which means it still has a crap ton of surface parking. Ped bike access on the South Platte River Trail, though, pretty good. So well oriented to the Meow Wolf Convergence Station, just in case the football game is dull. Dedicated light rail station, a 10-minute walk from the stadium, so that's solid. What probably puts it on the list though, almost 250,000 people within the 5-kilometer radius catchment area, which puts it in the top 5 among all NFL stadiums. 9, Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh. Okay, so this one actually has one of the 5 smallest stadium/parking footprints, if you can believe it. And don't worry, later I'm going to show you some dishonorable mentions that'll make you want to rinse your eyes out with sulfuric acid. The stadium district is well connected by rail, and it ranks 6th in bike score rating, which I was skeptical about. But then I realized it is on the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, which runs on the north side of the Allegheny and the Ohio. I did check this out while I was in Pittsburgh earlier this year. It connects up to all the bridges that go into downtown, so yeah, Acrisure has legit good bike access. 8. Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. Really pretty solid across the board. The site footprint isn't atrocious. Reasonable access to both the blue and yellow links lines. Charlotte in general is not a city with high population density, but the stadium is in Uptown, close into the most highly populated parts of the city. The stadium dovetails into the street grid pretty nicely with lots of residential and commercial nearby. And as a result, it's top 5 among NFL stadiums when it comes to walk score rating. 7. Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. You know, when I was thinking about this list, before I analyzed it, I kind of thought this was a contender for number 1. But I've been out to the stadium. It's not quite as close or well connected to downtown as you would think. But that might change fairly quickly based on the construction activity I saw going on. It is above average on everything I looked at, and it's top 5 for transit score rating. You know, I kind of wonder whether the transit score methodology underrates it, because it does really have the best heavy rail access of any NFL stadium, but the methodology gives heavy rail and light rail the same weight. Transit score does account for service frequency, so that's good, but outside of that, it seems like it considers MARTA to be the same quality of service as the New Orleans streetcar, which serves the number 6 stadium, the Caesars Superdome. So we're really giving sports venue naming rights to gambling corporations? Seems bad. Anyway, I've got the Superdome as top 5 in stadium footprint. It's not top 5 in population catchment area, but on the other hand, this does represent about 20% of the population in the entire metro area, so that's a plus. And I can't vouch for the bike infrastructure, but it does have a top 5 bike score rating. And as recently as 2019, the Saints quarterback was riding his bike to the stadium on game days, so I guess that's an endorsement. 5. Soldier Field in Chicago, which I want to give points to for not having a corporate sponsor, but I didn't. Anyway, now we're getting to the meat of the list. Top 5 transit score rating. It's a 20-minute walk to the L, but Metra is very close and they do run extra trains on game days. Top 3 bike score, which I buy since the stadium is basically on the Lakefront Trail, which is a pretty high volume route. And it's also top 3 in terms of 5-kilometer catchment area, impressive since about half of that circle is in Lake Michigan. Part of this is the nearby South Loop area is incredibly dense. I totally omitted it from my recent Chicago video just due to time constraints, but I will definitely feature it next time. Classic venue that gets a lot of things right, but it looks like the Bears ownership is planning to move the team 25 miles out of town. Just great. Number 4, Ford Field in Detroit, second smallest overall footprint of the 30 stadiums. Now, a note on this, several NFL stadiums share a location with one or more other pro sports venues, and in these cases, I only allocated the parking that was closest to the football stadium, so there's more parking that gets used on Lions game days, but they're shared facilities with Comerica Park, where the Tigers play, so in a way, I'm giving Detroit credit for being efficient with parking supply, which I think is appropriate. The other thing is the stadium is top 3 when it comes to walk score rating, which seems weird because a lot of the walk shed is taken up by a freeway interchange, but it's otherwise pretty well connected to downtown Detroit's funky grid, and there is a lot going on downtown, so I buy it. 3. M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. Also a bit of a shared resources setup with Camden Yards to the north. The overall footprint still isn't great, but the stadium is top 3 in transit score rating with its own light rail station at Hamburg Street and a pretty short walk to the Camden Mark station. Also, top 5 in both walk score and bike score rating, which doesn't necessarily seem justified by the infrastructure, but it does have the highest population within a 5-kilometer catchment area of any stadium on this list, just behind SoFi in LA, which didn't make the cut. So there are a lot of nearby neighborhoods within walking and biking distance. Okay, if you follow the National Football League, you can probably start to guess what the top 2 are, so stick around to see what order I put them in. Also, the dishonorable mentions are so incredibly bad that I was very tempted to make this a bottom 10 video instead. And I do want to talk about Canadian football too, because the stadiums up there are going to add a lot of perspective. First, quick reminder of all the ways to engage and stay connected with the channel. No more travel in 2025, but I do have some things cooking for 2026. Probably New York early in the year and a couple other cities in the works, TBD. As always, my patrons find out first and get early access to tickets, etc. So consider supporting if you aren't already. Okay, I do want to talk about the Canadian Football League. Nearly all the stadiums here would make today's list, partly because Canadian cities tend to do things like residential density and transit better, but also because these are smaller stadiums, so the footprint is necessarily more compact and they're easier to site. So, for example, Percival Molson Memorial Stadium, home of the Montreal Alouettes, would be number 1 in the NFL with great metrics across the board and way more people in the 5-kilometer catchment area than any NFL stadium. Well, actually it wouldn't be number 1 because that would be BC Place in Vancouver. Smaller footprint than any NFL stadium, more population within 5 kilometers, and just insane walk, transit, and bike score ratings. And it seats over 50,000, so it's in the ballpark of a smaller NFL stadium. Vancouver, always the outlier. Dishonorable mentions, I'll just give you the lowest ranked stadium. It's Arrowhead in Kansas City. I don't even need metrics to know this is bad, but here they are anyway. Extra bad, given that it shares a site with Kauffman Stadium, so there's a bunch of parking I didn't even attribute to Arrowhead. Borderline despicable stuff, but I reserve the most loathing for the stadiums in 3 of our country's most urbanist metro areas, right on the Acela corridor. These are stadiums that are so remotely located and so car dependent that they apparently didn't have enough data to calculate any kind of transit score rating. Like, I understand that there's a conventional wisdom that this is preferable to putting a hulking football stadium in the middle of your city, but just understand that this is all viewed very differently, not only in Europe, but apparently in DC, where it looks like the redevelopment of the old RFK site is moving forward. And all of this is also viewed very differently in our top 2 US cities. Number 2, US Bank Stadium, home of the Vikings. It's top 3 when it comes to overall footprint, and it's number 2 on walk score rating. I mean, this is as nicely as an NFL stadium fits into a central city grid anywhere in the US. Also, number 2 on transit score with a dedicated light rail station right on the plaza serving both of the Twin Cities metro lines. And I love when a stadium's directions and parking webpage has a train right at the top. US Bank has got a top 5 population catchment area, and it has the number 1 bike score rating of all NFL stadiums, which I think is appropriate since Minneapolis has the highest citywide bike score rating of any city that hosts an NFL team. So the fact that this works in Minneapolis may have more to do with the city than the stadium itself, which is kind of the thesis of this video. And number 1, Lumen Field in Seattle on the south side of downtown. First of all, not a top 5 population catchment area. It's Seattle, so a 5-kilometer radius picks up a lot of water. So because of that, Lumen really has to get everything else right, and it does. Number 2 bike score after US Bank Stadium, and not only the number 1 transit score, but a perfect 100 with the Stadium Link Station and the King Street Intercity and Regional Rail Station just steps away, and tons of other transit services around the stadium. Also, number 1 on walk score rating and stadium footprint. And if you go into the Google Earth historical imagery, you can see how the north parking lot has shrunk over time and filled in with high density, active urban uses. And this really is as good as it gets in the US. One thing I didn't even get to in today's video is the drastic difference between how we think about how to site stadiums in the US versus how things work in, for example, European football leagues. The comparison is super instructive because it goes to not just differences in culture and customs around sporting events, but the very different ways Americans and Europeans relate to their cities and the way those cities are designed. Luckily, I don't have to go into all of that because a great video on the topic already exists. It's from the creator Mapify, and what you're looking at is all from the video, Beyond the Bleachers, Part 1, Where Stadiums Are Built, Europe versus North America. Mapify is great because their content shares a lot of the same love for cities, geography, and sports that I have, except what they do is much, much more visually pleasing. Their stuff is extremely thoughtful too, so it shouldn't surprise you to learn that Where Stadiums Are Built, Europe versus North America isn't exclusive to the platform. After all, Nebula is always my first stop when I'm looking for original, well-considered, human-created content. And it is home to lots of great city planning, architecture, and engineering-related content, but we all have broader interests. At least, I think we do, and Nebula has great creators across all kinds of categories like sports, culture, and travel. So it's a platform where you can definitely find big, ambitious, highly entertaining projects like Downey Express, which will scratch your itch for train travel like nothing else. But you're also going to find a great roster of smaller creators who work in niche topic areas you love. For me, being part of Nebula has been indispensable when it comes to growing my channel and connecting with new audiences. And when you subscribe, yes, it means you get my content early and ad-free, but also subscribing really helps support me being able to do what I do. Now, signing up isn't just a great way to invest in the creators you care about. It's also an investment in continuing to make the Nebula streaming experience itself better and better. Because yes, Nebula is kind of like Netflix for people who are a little too into trains, but on a deeper level, it's a home base for content that's a little more thoughtful, that's created by humans for humans, which I think is more important than ever. And there's a pretty big idea behind all of it: raising the level of the entire platform and growing it into a prestige streaming service. So if you use my custom link down in the description or the QR code right here on screen, you're gonna get the best deal. All the Nebula content for 40% off the regular price when you sign up for an annual subscription, or even better, a lifetime subscription. Regular price for lifetime is now $500, but with my creator link, it's just $300. You pay once and you get Nebula for as long as both you and Nebula exist. And if you're looking for a cool and unique gift idea for the holiday season, you can get Nebula gift cards at all the same great prices, including the lifetime deal. Just use my creator link down in the description. So signing up for Nebula really is a fantastic way to demonstrate your support for a one-of-a-kind creator-owned platform and to fund the continued production of amazing originals, and there's great new stuff hitting the platform all the time. So my recommendation, use my custom link or the QR code right here on screen to get Nebula for 40% off. That's just $300 for the lifetime deal. It's nebula.tv/CityNerd. And then go watch part 1 of Mapify's Behind the Bleachers series right now. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons for your direct support, which is instrumental in letting me do whatever this is every week instead of getting a real job. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode in 2 weeks, and I'll see you then.